welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to dive into a question that is so fundamental, so close to the core of who we are, that we almost never think to ask it. And that question is, why do you want what you want? I mean, think about that for a second. Not just the fleeting wants, like a cup of coffee. I mean the big things. The career you've poured your life into, the person you chose to build a life with, the city you call home. We all operate under this powerful, deeply ingrained assumption that all of these desires bubble up from some unique, authentic inner self. We love the story that we are the captains of our own ship, the sole authors of our ambitions. It's really the bedrock of our modern idea of individualism. But what if that entire story is a myth? What if it's the most powerful and comforting lie we tell ourselves? What if the operating system for your desire, the very thing that drives you forward, is running on code that was written by somebody else? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this secret engine of desire. Drawing from the incredible work of Burgis in his book Wanting, which builds on the profound theories of the French thinker René Girard, we're going to explore this invisible force. This isn't just some abstract academic idea. I promise you, understanding this hidden social gravity is the very first step toward finding real freedom and intentionality in your own life. So get ready to question everything you think you know about yourself and why you want things.
So here's the game plan for our journey today, and it's a journey that's going to take us into some pretty fascinating and at times pretty dark corners of human nature. First, we're going to tackle the foundational idea, the desire of others. This is where we'll expose what Burgis calls the romantic lie and introduce the revolutionary concept of mimetic desire from René Girard. This is the bedrock for everything else. Then, second, we'll journey into the two very different worlds where this desire operates, Celebristan versus Freshmanistan. This is such a brilliant framework that explains why you can admire a figure like Elon Musk or a historical hero, but feel a burning, secret jealousy for a coworker who gets a slightly better promotion. It's all about how close you are to your models. Third, we're going to venture into the shadows with rivalry and scapegoats. This is where we follow the logic of mimetic desire to its darkest conclusion, exploring how it inevitably brews conflict and how human societies for thousands of years have used a brutal, hidden mechanism to keep from tearing themselves apart. And finally, and this is the most important part, we'll land on choosing what you want, because this isn't meant to be a story of doom and gloom. We're going to give you the tools to tell the difference between what Burgis calls fleeting, thin wants and the deep, thick desires that lead to a meaningful life. We're going from diagnosis to cure. So let's jump in.
All right, let's get started with our first section, the desire of others. And that subtitle, Unmasking the Romantic Lie, is exactly what we need to do. Before we can even begin to think about building a life of authentic desire, we have to first see and then tear down the faulty foundation that most of us are unknowingly building our lives on. This first concept is the absolute linchpin for everything that follows. It's the key that unlocks the whole system. This is the discovery that took René Girard from being just another brilliant literary critic to becoming one of the most important and challenging thinkers about human nature in the last century. So let's start with a simple question that, as you'll see, isn't simple at all.
I want you to take a second and really think about this. Pick something you want or something you've achieved. Maybe it's your job. Let's say you're a graphic designer. The story you tell yourself, the official story, is that you've always loved art, you're a visual person, you love creativity. And that's all true. But let's dig deeper. Let's be detectives of our own desires. When did you decide to pursue that career? Was it after you saw a friend from college getting praise and recognition for their cool design work? Was there a particular designer whose lifestyle you saw on Instagram that seemed so free and creative? Or let's take something smaller, that Peloton bike sitting in your corner. Did you really want it after reading spec sheets online? Or did the desire crystallize after 3 of your friends got one and started posting their workouts and talking about it constantly? This is what René Girard did. He was like a Sherlock Holmes for human motivation. He looked at the great novels, at ancient myths, at history, at the Bible, and he kept seeing the same pattern, this hidden clue that everyone else missed. He saw that desire is almost never a straight line between us and the thing we want. It's a triangle. There's us, the thing we want, and, most importantly, someone else, a model who wants it first and shows us that it's desirable.
This little example of the martini is the perfect miniature laboratory for understanding this giant force. Let's really walk through the micro moments here. You're at a bar, you've had a long day, and you know exactly what you want. A cold, familiar beer. Your desire is stable. It feels like your own. The waiter comes over. Your friend, whose opinion you respect, says, "I'll have a gin martini, up, with a twist." Now, in that split second, something shifts in the universe of your desire. The martini, an object that wasn't even on your radar, is suddenly lit up with a special glow. Your friend's choice made it seem more sophisticated, more interesting. But here's the critical part. Your brain doesn't say, oh, I'm just a copycat, I'll have what he's having. That would feel cheap, inauthentic. Instead, your brain performs a beautiful little trick. It generates a new, spontaneous thought that feels entirely your own. You know what? I haven't had a martini in ages. A martini actually sounds perfect right now. You create a reason after the fact to justify the desire that was just beamed into you by your friend. This, right here, is the gateway drug to understanding mimetic desire. The martini is trivial, but the mechanism is everything. It's the same engine that makes you feel a pang of envy when a colleague gets a promotion you never even thought about wanting. Suddenly, you don't just want a new role, you want that role, because their having it has now defined it as a prize. The object itself is secondary to the desire of the model.
And all of this leads us to the big boss we have to defeat, the romantic lie. This is the cultural air we breathe, the belief that our wants spring forth from some deep inner well of pure authenticity. And nobody in history understood how to weaponize this lie better than a man named Edward Bernays. He was Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he's often called the father of public relations, which is a polite way of saying he was a master manipulator of the public's desires. Let me tell you about his most famous campaign. In the 1920s, it was taboo for women to smoke in public. It was seen as vulgar and unladylike. The American Tobacco Company hired Bernays to fix this problem. Now, a direct ad campaign would have failed. He knew he couldn't just create a desire for cigarettes out of thin air. He needed models. So what did he do? He hired a group of wealthy, fashionable socialites, the influencers of their day, to join the 1929 Easter Day Parade in New York. Then, he tipped off the press that a group of suffragettes were planning a protest and would be lighting torches of freedom. At a designated moment in the parade, these glamorous women all dramatically pulled out Lucky Strike cigarettes and lit up in public. The next day, it was in newspapers everywhere. He had brilliantly linked the physical product, the cigarette, to a much deeper abstract desire for female empowerment and liberation. All of a sudden, for millions of women, the desire to smoke no longer felt like a desire for nicotine. It felt like an authentic, personal act of rebellion and modernity. They were being perfectly manipulated, all while believing they were making a bold, independent choice. That's the power of the romantic lie.
So this is the theory that ties it all together. Mimetic desire. Mimesis is just a fancy Greek word for imitation. We usually think of desire as a straight line. There's me, the subject, and there's the iPhone, the object. Girard says, no, that model is totally wrong. Desire is always a triangle. There's you, the iPhone, and a third person, the model. It could be a celebrity in an ad, or it could be your best friend. Their desire is what lights up the object for you. The object is like a cold, dark moon. It only shines when it reflects the light of a star, and the star is the model. I love the analogy to gravity. You can't cut open the sun and find gravity inside. You can't find it inside the earth either. Gravity is the invisible force in the space between objects that governs their relationship. Desire is just like that. It doesn't live inside of you. It doesn't live inside the object. It lives in the social space between people. And this isn't something we learn. It's our factory setting. There's this incredible research by a scientist named Andrew Meltzoff. He would sit in front of newborn babies. I'm talking babies who were just 42 minutes old, and he would stick out his tongue. And what did the babies do? With no instruction, no understanding of what a tongue even was, they would stick their own tongues out, imitating him. This is mind-blowing. It tells us that imitation isn't just one of the things we do, it's our primary way of learning to be human. We imitate to learn, and that includes learning what is worth wanting.
And of course, the greatest poet of human nature, William Shakespeare, understood this hundreds of years before Girard came along. When the character Hermia cries out this line, she is putting her finger on the deep, deep pain of this human condition. She's not just complaining that her dad is trying to pick her husband. She's screaming against the tyranny of mimetic desire itself. It is a special kind of hell to have your most profound wants, who you love, what you live for, filtered through the eyes, the values, and the desires of another person. This is the secret engine, and it is running in your mind right this very second, shaping how you see the world, what you value, what you strive for. And here's the key takeaway from this whole first part. Being unaware of this engine is not a defense against it. In fact, your ignorance is what gives it its power. It lets the engine run your life on autopilot. Now that we can see the engine, we have to ask, Who are the people programming it? And that brings us to our next section.
Okay, let's get into our second big idea, and this is where the theory becomes incredibly practical for understanding your own life. We've established this foundational truth: we are all imitators. Our desires are borrowed. The next most logical question is, okay, so who are we borrowing from? It turns out the answer to that question changes everything. The distance between you and your model of desire, whether they are a godlike celebrity or the person in the cubicle next to you, determines whether the imitation leads to inspiration or to inflammation. It's the difference between healthy admiration and toxic, soul-crushing envy. To explain this, Burgis introduces two brilliant concepts that divide our social lives into two parallel universes: Celebristan and Freshmanistan. Figuring out which world you're operating in at any given moment is the key to understanding your own anxieties and ambitions. Let's kick it off with a perfect example.
This example of Elizabeth Holmes is the absolute perfect illustration of these two worlds in action. Let's really break this down. Holmes, the founder of the disgraced company Theranos, was famous for how openly she modeled herself after Steve Jobs. She adopted his signature black turtleneck, she hired designers who had worked for him at Apple, she even tried to mimic his secretive management style and his famous reality distortion field. And for a while, people were actually impressed by this. They saw it as an homage to a great innovator. She was borrowing his gravitas. It was okay. Now let's flip the script. Imagine a junior software engineer at Theranos started showing up to work every single day in a black turtleneck. Imagine they started affecting a strange, deep voice, just like Holmes did. Imagine they started trying to mimic her management style in their small team. What would happen? They would be seen as bizarre, insubordinate, and deeply threatening. They would be fired in a heartbeat. Why the completely different reaction? It's one word: distance. Steve Jobs was in another universe from Elizabeth Holmes. He was dead, he was an icon, he was in no way competing with her for venture capital or a magazine cover. Their worlds didn't overlap. But that junior employee, they are in the exact same world as Holmes. They're in the same building, in the same hierarchy, competing for the same limited pool of resources like promotions, attention, and status. When your model is that close, imitation is no longer flattery. It's a challenge. It's rivalry.
So this slide here lays out the official rules for these two worlds. Let's spend a good amount of time with each one. First, on the left, you have Celebristan. This is the realm of what Girard called external mediation. Your models are way outside your world. They're in a different sphere. Think of historical figures like Abraham Lincoln, or saints like Mother Teresa, or untouchable mega celebrities like Beyoncé. You can openly say, I'm inspired by Lincoln's perseverance. There's no conflict because you and Lincoln are not applying for the same job. Imitating them is safe, it's aspirational, it elevates you without threatening anyone. Now, on the right, we have the world where most of us spend our lives, Freshmanistan. The name is just perfect. Think about the intense, claustrophobic social hell of a high school freshman class where everyone is constantly comparing themselves to everyone else. This is the world of internal mediation. Your models are the people right next to you. Your boss, your sibling, your neighbor with the nicer car, your friend who seems to have a happier marriage. Here in Freshmanistan, imitation is always hidden. You would never, ever say to your coworker, I'm applying for that promotion because you are, and I want what you have. To name the imitation is to declare the rivalry openly, so it all goes underground. It becomes a world of secret competition, unspoken envy, and the endless, exhausting game of keeping up with the Joneses. Your social media feed is basically a window into everyone else's carefully curated Freshmanistan.
Let's really sit with this question for a moment and be brutally honest with ourselves. Who actually sparks a stronger feeling of jealousy in your gut? Jeff Bezos with his hundreds of billions of dollars, or your colleague Sarah, who just got a raise that puts her salary just 10 grand above yours? For 99.9% of us, the answer is Sarah. It's not even close. But why? This is so counterintuitive, but it's the core of the theory. Jeff Bezos lives in Celebristan. He might as well live on another planet. His wealth is so massive, it's just an abstract number. It doesn't feel real. His success poses absolutely no threat to our status in our own world. We can be amazed by him or disgusted by him, but we don't feel a personal sense of rivalry. But Sarah? Oh, Sarah lives right there in Freshmanistan with you. You are in the same social ecosystem. That $10,000 is not an abstract number. It's a concrete, tangible symbol of status within your shared world. It means she might get the more interesting assignments. It means the boss might value her opinions slightly more in meetings. She is a direct rival for the scarce resources of recognition and respect in your immediate environment. And this reveals the great paradox of human conflict. The most intense, bitter, and all-consuming rivalries are almost never between people who are wildly different. They are between people who are almost identical.
The closer we are, the more we want the same things, and the more likely we are to fight over them.
Okay, so we've been navigating the worlds of office politics and neighborhood envy. But now, we have to follow the logic of this powerful engine to its final and often terrifying destination. Welcome to Section 3, Rivalry and Scapegoats. We're zooming out now from the psychology of two people in Freshmanistan to the dynamics of an entire society. Because when these mimetic rivalries are left to fester, when the contagion of wanting what your neighbor wants spreads from one-on-one to everyone on everyone, it doesn't just cause anxiety, it generates a wildfire of violence. Girard's theory provides a shocking and profound explanation for why human conflict erupts, and for the strange, ancient, and often brutal ritual that societies have used since the beginning of time to keep themselves from literally tearing themselves apart. This is the dark underbelly of the mimetic engine.
A beach towel. Let's just pause and think about how completely absurd that is. How on earth does a simple disagreement over a piece of printed cotton escalate into a full-blown riot involving dozens of people at a family water park? This is a perfect modern-day laboratory for watching mimetic contagion explode in real time. Let's trace it. It probably started with two individuals, maybe the fathers of two families. They are in Freshmanistan with each other, they're equals, competing for the same scarce resource, which in this case is a good spot by the pool. One person makes a move for the towel, the other person gets aggressive. Now, the second that first shove happens, the object of desire subtly changes. It's not just about the towel anymore. The second person's desire now imitates the aggression of the first person. And then what happens? Other family members see this. They aren't imitating the original desire for the towel. They are now imitating the desire to fight on behalf of their tribe. And the other family does the exact same thing. In a matter of seconds, the towel is completely forgotten. It is totally irrelevant. What is relevant now is the escalating reciprocal cycle of violence. Each side becomes a perfect mirror image of the other, blindly imitating the other's hostility. This is how mimetic conflict works. It spreads like a virus, and the original cause becomes meaningless.
This quote from Girard gets to the absolute core of his most radical idea. For centuries, our default explanation for conflict has been difference. We think people fight because they are different. We see it in politics, right versus left. We see it in religion, our God versus their God. We see it in history, our nation versus their nation. The story is always that conflict is born from difference. Girard looked at this and said, no, that's almost completely backward. The most dangerous and intractable conflicts arise not from difference, but from a terrifying, escalating sameness. Think about Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet again. What's the very first thing he tells us in the prologue? The two warring families are both alike in dignity. They're not different. They're mirror images of each other. And precisely because they are so alike, they desire the same things, the same power, the same honor, the same control over the city of Verona. They become nothing but their opposition to the other. They are locked in a perfect mimetic cycle of vengeance where every violent act is just an imitation of the last one. They hate each other not because they are different, but because they are so terrifyingly the same.
So this leads to the ultimate question. What happens when this mimetic crisis, this contagion of sameness, threatens to destroy an entire community, when everyone is at war with everyone else? This is where Girard made his most world-changing discovery. He argued that ancient human cultures, facing this constant threat of self-annihilation, stumbled upon a dark but incredibly effective social technology, the scapegoat mechanism. Let's walk through the steps because it works like a kind of dark magic. Step 1. The community is in crisis. The mimetic rivalry has reached a fever pitch. It's a chaotic war of all against all. Step 2. Out of this chaos, spontaneously, the furious attention of the crowd begins to converge on a single individual or a small group. This person, the scapegoat, is usually chosen because they are different in some way. An outsider, a foreigner, someone with a physical disability. Their difference makes them an easy target. Step 3. A new mimetic wave takes over. Everyone starts imitating the accusation against the scapegoat. And here's the magic trick. The chaotic violence of all against all is miraculously transformed into the focused, unifying violence of all against one. By uniting in their shared hatred of this single victim, the community rediscovers a sense of solidarity and peace. They kill or expel the scapegoat, genuinely believing they have eliminated the source of their problems. Peace is restored, but it's a peace built on a lie. A peace paid for with the blood of an innocent. Girard saw this exact pattern hidden in countless ancient myths and rituals. And as we see with online mobbing today, this ancient mechanism is very much still with us.
Okay, we have just walked through some very dark and heavy territory. We've seen how this hidden engine of desire can lead from simple envy to social rivalry and all the way to collective violence and the scapegoat. And it's really easy to hear all of this and feel a sense of fatalism, to feel like we're just helpless puppets on these invisible mimetic strings. But the entire point of this work and of this explainer is not to leave you feeling hopeless. It's to shine a bright light on the system precisely so that you can see the exit signs. The knowledge of the system is the beginning of your freedom from it. So for our final section, we are turning from the problem to the solution, choosing what you want. We're going to talk about how to move from being a passive product of your environment to being an active architect of your own desires. Is there a way out? Yes, but it requires developing a new kind of awareness and a new vocabulary for the things we want.
This distinction between thin and thick desires is the most important practical tool that Burgis gives us. So let's really break it down. On the left, you have thin desires. These are the desires that are born and bred in Freshmanistan. They're highly contagious, spreading through your social group like a cold. The desire for the latest tech gadget is the perfect example. The desire feels urgent, but once you get it, the satisfaction is incredibly shallow and short-lived because a new model is already on the way. The desire was never about the phone, it was about keeping up. Thin desires are fragile. They can be easily replaced by the next trend. Chasing prestige is another classic thin desire. The word itself comes from a Latin word for a magician's illusion, or trick, and that's exactly what it is, a shimmering mirage that we chase because we see others chasing it. Now contrast that with thick desires. These are not catchy, they have to be cultivated. They take time, effort, and commitment. They are deeply personal and enduring. They are rooted in your own unique values and history, not the whims of the crowd. The example of a master craftsman is perfect. The desire that a carpenter has to create a perfect piece of furniture after 30 years of practice is not something she picked up on Instagram. It's a thick desire. It's part of her identity. You couldn't just swap it out for a desire to be a day trader. Thick desires are the ones that give your life weight and a center of gravity. Like the desire to raise a good family, to achieve true mastery in a difficult skill, or to serve a cause you deeply believe in.
And this slide really gets to the core of the solution. Cultivating your thick desires is the only real armor you have against the constant, anxiety-inducing noise of thin, mimetic wants. This is not easy work. It requires you to consciously step away from the noise of Freshmanistan. It means turning off social media, spending time in silence, and asking yourself some hard questions. Questions like, what did I love doing as a kid before I knew what was cool? What activities in my life make me lose all track of time? Who are my real models, maybe people in Celebristan, or even people from my own life who seem to embody these thick, admirable desires? And it also takes a ton of courage. It takes the courage to look at the people in your immediate circle, the people you like and respect, and say, I see what you want, and that's great for you, but it is not what I want. It is the incredibly difficult work of building an internal compass that is strong enough to resist the powerful magnetic pull of the crowd. It's the difference between being a leaf tossed about by every new gust of wind and being a deeply rooted tree that can stand its ground. And so we land here, at the question this entire explainer has been building towards. It looks so simple on the screen. So, what do you truly want? But after everything we've just gone through, you can now feel the immense weight and complexity hidden in those 6 words. You now know that the old answer, the answer of the romantic lie, is not enough. You can't just look inside your heart. You now know that you also have to practice what you might call extrospection. You have to look outward and consciously identify the models and the systems of desire that are operating on you. The real work starts now. Take out an actual piece of paper. Who are your models? Are they in Celebristan, providing healthy inspiration? Or are they all in Freshmanistan, fueling secret rivalries? Look at your biggest ambitions. Are they built on the solid rock of thick desire, or the shifting sands of a thin, mimetic want? This framework doesn't give you the easy answers, but for the first time, it might just give you the right questions.
We'll leave you with this final, powerful quote from Luke Burgis that you should really let sink in. There are always models of desire. If you don't know yours, they are probably wreaking havoc in your life. You can't opt out of imitation. It's how we're built. The choice is not whether you will have models of desire. The only choice is whether you will choose them consciously or whether you will let them choose you unconsciously. To ignore your models is not to be free of them, it is to give them total, unchecked control over your life. They become your secret tyrants, pushing you towards careers you don't actually enjoy, rivalries that make you miserable, and a feeling of emptiness even when you succeed. But by doing the hard work, the work of identifying your models, of interrogating your wants, of consciously cultivating those thick, foundational desires, you can hijack this entire engine. You can turn what was once a hidden source of anxiety into a transparent and powerful source of purpose, meaning, and a life that is truly your own.